Welcome to the Ceres 2009 Agency Relations Training course. Today's class is regarding the overview of agency, parent agency, and shopper setup, and the key fields related to Feeding America reporting and web processing that are on the cards. This includes fields such as the UNC Food Bank ID, SDO, Food Bank Program, FBC County Code, Permit Web Orders, UNC Activity Status, Credit Limit, Location, and others. We will also review the agency days and hours setup. Agencies and receivables is the starting place for our topic today. To get to the parent agency, we'll click on Agencies and Receivables and then Agency Relations. You may or may not be using parent agencies, but if you are using parent agencies, you would need to set up the parent agency first before setting up a new agency. We'll start by creating a new parent agency by selecting parent agencies under the lists. As you can see, we already have several parent agencies set up. Just to start a new parent agency, we'll click on the new icon in our Actions pane. If using automatic numbering, then when you hit Enter, the parent agency number will be assigned. If you're using manual numbering, then you would enter the agency number manually. Once the parent agency number has been defined, you'll be able to enter the name for that particular parent agency. If a second name is needed, enter that in the Name To field. If you have the information for the address for the parent agency, go ahead and enter that. Enter the city, state, and zip as known. If you have a phone number for the parent agency, go ahead and enter that here. Also, if you have a contact, you would enter the contact information in this field. If the name that the parent agency is often called by is different from their legal name, then you can enter that name here. You can use that for finding the parent agency later in the system. You'll notice that the next couple fields are all flow fields, meaning no information can be entered directly into these fields. The values that go into these fields come from other areas of the system and will be updated accordingly from the agency information associated with this parent agency. We currently do not have any agencies defined, so we have no information showing here. If using responsibility centers, also known as branch code, then you would select that here for the default. The blocked field is a field where you can select from a drop-down list to block information for the parent agency. Generally, you would not want to block any information on the parent agency if you are using active agencies underneath it. If you block shipments, then that means that any shipments for agencies associated with this parent agency would not be able to be posted. If you block invoice, then you would not be able to invoice any of the agencies associated with the parent agency. If you block all, you would not be able to post any transactions, including cash receipts, for agencies associated with this parent agency. The default is blank. The last date modified and last modified by fields are system generated and will be updated when the parent agency information is saved. As you can see on the Communication Fast tab, the phone number from the General tab flowed to this field. Anything that you enter on the Fast tab that also appears on the Communication tab, such as the phone number, will flow, and if you make a change on either tab, it will update the other one. You can also enter fax number or email and home page for the associated parent agency if you have that information. On the Invoicing tab, typically this will be left blank. So if the only thing that you would probably want to add Update, if necessary, are the number of invoice copies. 0 means that if you print an invoice, you will just get the original. If you put in 1, then you would get the original plus 1 copy, although you can also handle that through the actual printing feature. For the shipping tab, the default location code, if you need to set a default location for this particular parent agency, which will also flow to any agencies associated with it, however, the location can be updated on each individual agency, you would select that location code here. If you have 501c3 information for the parent agency, you can enter that information on this field. That's pretty much all that needs to be set up on the parent agency card before you can actually set up a new agency associated with it. To save your changes, click OK. And now we'll look for our parent agency that we just created. This is the one we created right here. And if we open it up again, you'll notice that the last date modified by the last date modified and last modified by were updated by the system. Now we can create a new agency associated with that parent agency. We'll return to the Agency Relations menu, and this time we'll select Agencies from the lists. To create a new agency, we click on New, and we can hit Enter to create the new agency number if using default numbering. We can also then click in the Parent Agency Number field and select our parent agency from this list, or we could type it in if we know the number. Or if we don't know the number, we can also just simply type in the name . Helps if I type it right. Well, in some cases you can type in the name or the search name, and I think I changed the search name to parent agency test. I'm not sure, but typically in this field you can also use the search name to find the whatever it is that you're looking for. In this case, the parent agency number, but I apparently typed in something incorrectly, so it didn't find it. You could also, if you didn't have the number or the name, you could click on the advanced, and then you could search for it from an advanced view of the parent agency list by putting in number, name, or any other information that you had, finding the parent agency, and then selecting it. Because I changed the parent agency number after starting the creation of this agency card, it's asking me if I want to go ahead and update the records. Typically you wouldn't get this message if you selected the correct parent agency to start with, so I'm going to say yes to continue. As you can see, it fills in the information from the parent agency card from the General tab. Obviously we're no longer on a parent agency, so you would input the agency name here. So I'm going to call mine Test Agency. If the address of the agency is different than the parent agency, then you would want to change the address here. And update any of the other fields, such as zip code, phone number, contact, the search name field will populate with the value in the name field. If the search name again is different from the legal name of the agency, you can simply change it here. The balance field is a flow field and will be determined by any open invoices. The credit limit field is a field that can be assigned to each individual agency if using credit limits. So if you wish to restrict what the agency can order, then you can enter the credit limit here. When you look at the parent agency card, any agencies underneath it, their combined credit limits will show on the parent agency card. So if we go look at the parent agency right now, it would help if I selected that correctly. You'll notice that it hasn't been updated yet because I haven't saved the value yet on my new agency. So I'll show you that in just one moment. But if you have more than one agency underneath the parent agency, then their credit limits will all combine on the parent agency card as well as their balances. The salesperson code field, if you track who contacts a particular agency, you can set each user up as a salesperson, and then you can assign the individual salesperson to the agency. And that way, if you're running reports and you want to look at agencies associated with a particular user in the system, then you can run the report by the salesperson code. The branch code field, again, that will only be used if you're using responsibility centers, and if you're not, then you'll likely have this field hidden on the form, so you don't actually have to enter anything into it if not using. If you wish to assign a default fund number for the agency, you can select from the list of funds. Service zones, if you're using service zones, then when you drill down in the field, you will see a code and you'll be able to select from that. In this particular test database, there are no service zones assigned, but this would be different from a delivery zone. This could just be an area of service. Excuse me. And you can define them however you would like. And if you haven't created any but want to create any on the fly, you can click on New and create a new service zone by putting in a code here and a description, whatever is applicable. And then once you've created the zone, you can click OK and assign it to the agency card. This information, anything that's entered on the agency card, if the values exist on a agency order, then those values will flow to the agency order from the card. The FBC county code is very important for determining what county the distributions to this agency will be included in when you run the distributions pound by county report. So you would use the drop down and select from the appropriate county. If the county does not exist already in the database and you need to add it, you can simply click on New and add the county. Again, this information determines what county the distributions for this agency show up in when you run the distribution pounds by county report. If no county exists on the agency card when the distributions are created, then the distributions will go into a blank section on the distributions by county report because it's looking at the agency ledger entry, the item ledger entries associated with that distribution, and if they don't exist on those ledger entries, then the report will not put the distributions in the correct county. So you'll need to make sure that you always set this up from the very beginning when creating a new agency so that that doesn't occur. The FBC agency category code, you can select from a list of drop-downs here. These are typically common categories that Feeding America provides, and you can select from the list here the type of agency category that's appropriate for this agency. UNC activity status. This is an activity status that determines whether or not you can post to for this agency. If you click on Advanced, you'll notice that there is a column here called Allow Posting, and the only activity status that has Allow Posting assigned is the active activity status. So if you assign one of these other activity statuses, then no posting will be able to occur for that agency unless the person who's doing the orders has the rights to override activity statuses that do not allow posting. So you want to make sure if you are going to be putting in any orders for this agency that you set them with an activity status that has the allow posting checked. You may have additional activity statuses in your system that aren't shown here. This is just a sampling of those that are available. that you can enter. This is a area where you can enter your own activity statuses. Even though it does say UNC activity status, you can update this field because there is no FBC activity status, which FBC stands for Food Bank Code, and UNC for Uniform Number Code. In most areas of the database, if it says UNC, then it's an area that you don't want to make changes to, but this is one area where you can add new activity statuses. The key is to remember that if you're using Agency Express, you will also need to make sure that you have those same activity statuses defined on the web. For now, we're going to select the active activity status for this particular agency so that in the future we can go ahead and do orders for this agency. The monitoring expiration date is the date that this agency, that this agency's expiration will occur. So if you've done a monitoring, then you would want to either manually enter the date or use the drop-down to find a calendar and enter the expiration date. So if their monitoring doesn't expire until a year from now, you can go ahead and find it in the calendar by using the fast forward and enter the date. The blocked field, similar to the blocked field on the parent agency, you have the same choices, blank, ship, invoice, and all, and the same criteria occurs, only that this is only for this particular agency, whereas if you have a setting on the parent agency, it will apply to all agencies that are associated with the parent. So be sure that if you're making a change and it's just for a specific agency where agencies share a parent, make it on the agency and not on the parent agency card. And if it's an overall change for all the agencies associated with the parent agency, then you want to make it on the parent agency card. Because I've already saved this card, you can see that the last date modified and last modified by have been updated. You'll also notice that there's a show fewer fields here. That's because we've set to promote some fields. So if I click on that, it actually collapses some information, and if I expand it, it puts the information back. So because it wasn't branch code. I thought it was branch code. But one of these fields here, which I didn't happen to catch, was it the salesperson code? Nope. I guess I'm just not paying enough attention. You can modify the tabs to show certain fields and not show certain fields, and also to promote fields. But that is a class that we discuss in customizing role centers, so I won't go into that right now. Just know that if you have an arrow down at the bottom, there may be fields that aren't displayed on the tab that if you choose to show more fields, then they will be displayed. And a lot of times what people will do is maybe they'll have those fields only available during setup, and then they'll hide those fields for normal use of the card because they're not something that they need to look at all the time. The communication tab, the phone number is similar to the phone number on the parent agency. If it exists on the general tab, it will flow to the communication tab, and if you change it on one or the other, it will change it on the general tab, or likewise if I change it here, it changes it here. You can also enter fax number and email for the agency as well as a home page if one exists, and if they have a partner code, then you can enter that here. You'll notice when I collapse the field that the phone number is still displayed, and that's because we've made that a promoted field on the tab. Again, more information about how to do promoted and additional fields will be included in the Customizing Role Centers class. Next, we'll go to the Invoicing tab. And you'll notice that the Bill To agency is grayed out. That's because we would never want you to change that, because if you did, then you would never be able to do any cash receipts if the Bill To agency was different than the agency. So we leave that grayed out. Invoice copies works the same way as it did on the parent agency card. The invoice discount code, this automatically fills in with the agency number. If you're using invoice discounts, then you can set those up and they will be associated with the code that's included here. Most food banks don't use invoice discounts. However, it may be your decision to use them, and you can set them up. These are default fields. Copy sell-to address to quote from. It will just come from the company address. I don't think there's any reason to change that. The only other option is person, but the typical setting is company, so you can usually just leave that. General Business Posting Group. These fields, the General Business Posting Group and Agency Posting Group, defined what general ledger accounts are hit when distributions or any sort of transactions associated with the agency are processed. It is not required to have a General Business Posting Group, but if you don't have a General Business Posting Group, then you need to make sure that in the General Ledger General Posting Setup that you have a combination of General Business Posting Group of blank and then whatever your agency posting group selection is. And if you click on the drill down here, we have 2 agency posting groups set up. When I click on Advanced, it shows me that the agency posting group is associated with receivables account of 1210 in this database, and the cold storage is associated with 1290. So you know by looking at this that if this agency's transaction should post to the receivables account 1210, which you can further view by going here to see that it's AR agencies, and on this one 1290 is AR miscellaneous. So that way you can make sure that you're picking the correct agency posting group for the agency that you're creating. When you click OK, it will fill in the posting group. And then based on the general posting setup, if a transaction is created for this agency, it will look to see for the combination of general business posting group of blank, agency posting group of agency, and then in conjunction with the general product posting group, which will come from the item, it will determine what GL accounts should be hit for those transactions on the agency side and on the item side. If the invoice should go to the parent agency, then you would place a checkbox in this field. And then when the invoice is created, it will include the parent agency address rather than the agency address shown up above. So if I have send invoice to parent agency selected, then the address that will be on the invoice will be Southwest Agency Street, because that was what was on the parent agency card. If you leave it unchecked, then the invoice will have the address from the agency card. If you are using agency fee groups to determine pricing differences for the agency, then you would select from the fee group here to associate it with this agency. And if not using agency fee groups, then you will not have anything defined here and will not need to select a value in this field. This is also known as agency price group. And if an agency has a fee group assigned, then depending on what the settings are for that agency fee group, they may be charged different amounts for items than an agency that either doesn't have a fee group assigned or has a different fee group assigned. Agency discount group, we don't have any set up. Again, if you are using agency discounts, you can set up the discount group and assign it here. There aren't that many that do agency discount groups, so if you're curious about it, you might reach out and check with other food banks to see how they use the discounts and how they set them up. Allow line discount defaults to checked. Again, that's if you do use discounts and you want to allow discount on the line, meaning the agency order line, then this will stay checked, and don't really know of any reason not to leave that checked. Prepayment percent, if you were to require prepayment for the agency, you can set up a prepayment percent, and that would mean that they would have to pay the prepayment amount before you would release the order for distribution. So if that's something that you're interested in using, you might want to find out more information about how to use prepayments, but the percentage would get sent here or set here. On the Payments tab, the application method for payments, meaning either entered through cash receipt or deposits, would be manual or apply to oldest. We recommend manual because that way you can choose the payment, or sorry, the invoice that you want to apply the payment to, whereas if it's set to apply to oldest, you'd have no control over which invoice the cash receipt payment would go to. This way you can actually select during the receipt what invoice to apply the payment to, or if you need to apply to multiple invoices. Payment terms code, this is where you set their due dates. So if you require that they pay within 30 days, then you would select from the payment terms of NUT 30. Again, this would be based on what's been set up for you in the payment terms, or if you're responsible for setting those up, you can go ahead and do that and then assign the correct payment term for the agency. Payment method code, not necessary to be filled in, but if you want to keep track of the payment method, you can certainly select the method there. If you do have some that are cash or COD, then you probably would want to make sure that that payment method code is defined and assigned to the agency so that hopefully the person who's doing the order can see that they require cash on deposit. If using reminders and finance charges, then you would select reminder term code and finance charge term code. Again, these are things that are not often used, but you can certainly set them up and then select the appropriate code here on the Payments tab. The print statements checkbox doesn't mean that you want to be able to print statements for the agency, because you can always print a statement for the agency regardless of whether this is checked or not. But what it does do is that if you have it checked on an agency card and you run the agency statements report and you only want to get the agencies where print statements is checked, then you can run the report and set a filter for print statements equals yes, and then the statements will only print for those agencies where a check mark is selected here. That way, if you have agencies that you don't often print statements for, you can leave them unchecked, and you won't have to filter out those agencies other than by saying print statements equals yes, which will filter those agencies out. So it makes it a little bit easier for reporting for doing the statements if you have this checked for your agencies that you always do statements for. Last statement number will fill in when statements are printed, so this will default to 0. Block payment tolerance. Most people aren't using payment tolerance, but if you do not want to allow payment tolerance, then you would check the box here. Foreign trade and kitting, I'm going to skip past. Most people don't have to do any settings here. If you do, then you'll learn that information during your implementation, and you would know what needed to be added for kitting. Foreign trade is usually hidden because most food banks don't have foreign trade. I just didn't have time to hide that tab before the training. On the information tab, we have quite a bit of information, kind of funny, on this tab. Here's where you determine whether or not the agency is permitted for web ordering if you're using Agency Express. If they are using web ordering, then you would have to select Permit Web Orders. However, before I can check the box to permit web orders, I have to first assign an agency group code. If I try to select Permit Web Orders first, then when I move off the line, it gives me a little red X here because I'm getting an error that says that I must first have the agency group code assigned. If I refresh the page, this is a message that will pop up because there's a UPS RoadNet integration in here. I'm just going to click OK, and it clears me out of that. So before I can assign the flag for permit web orders, I have to first give the agency an agency group code. So if you're using agency groups and you have them defined, this helps determine what qualifiers, because qualifiers is where, or the agency groups is where the qualifiers are set up. So if I click on advanced, I can see that 41 is location 11, Cook County, which is the agency that I created here. We have Cook County, and I think somewhere else I put location 11. Actually, you know what? I think it's location 13. My mistake. So we went 14, Cook County. You'll see that there's one qualifier associated with this particular program group. And if I click in this field, oops, I did that wrong. Let me go back there. If I go to Advanced, and I go to Related Information Group Qualifiers. I can see that the qualifier associated with that particular agency group is just the Cook County qualifier. There may be, depending on how you're using qualifiers in your system, you will just need to choose from the correct qualifier or agency group that's in the list. And if you believe that there's not a grouping that matches what your particular agency would need for qualifiers, then you may have to either set up a new one or speak to whoever sets up the qualifiers in the agency groups and get that taken care of, and then assign it to your agency. Once it's assigned, it does a little updating there. Then after I have an agency group code, I can mark this agency as permitted for web ordering. You'll notice that when I did that, I got an error message on the shipping tab. And if I scroll to the top here, it says the default ship to code must have a value in agency number A-0030. And this is a typical error message when permitting an agency for web order. If they don't have a default ship to code, then you will get this error message. And then as I click on the down arrow, it also tells me that validating the field permit web orders revealed that a problem exists in the default ship to code. So basically we have to create a default ship to before we can permit for web orders as well. So I'll go ahead and uncheck permit web orders. My errors go away. And I'll go to related information, agency, ship to addresses. And right now I don't have one, so I'm going to say new to create a new one. And you can either give it a name, or you can call it default, or you can call it the agency number, because you can have more than one ship to address for an agency if desired. And the ship to address can be different from the agency address. So if it's not the same as what we had on the agency, then we'll go ahead and fill in the different address here. Oops. Well, I guess I did create it. Would help if I was watching where I was. So you'll notice that it went away because I never completed the zip code information before I hit enter too soon. So my zip code didn't have a state or a city and state assigned to it. So when I input the zip, it cleared out the city and state. So I would need to come here and edit this. Hopefully it won't take too long to rename. Okay, and now the city and the state are filled in because I updated that. The phone number, again, if it's different for the ship to address, then you can enter it here. If not, it'll just come from the agency. And you can fill in the location if you wish to default it, and a default shipment method code. And this other information should come from the agency card. We can talk about that in just a moment when I get to another tab. I think maybe I missed it on the shipping tab, but we'll go back and take a look. Now we have a ship to address, so I'm going to close this. And hopefully now we should be able to, okay, well it just gave me, so I guess now I know why my error is. It says a default ship to code must have a value, and I didn't create one called default. So we'll have to make sure we create one called default. So we'll go ahead and create a new ship to code. First I have to uncheck permit web orders, and then I'll go back here to agency ship to addresses, and we'll create a new one. This one we'll call default. And I won't make any changes here because it should pull the information from the agency. All right, let's go ahead and expand this and see. Now, okay, so it wasn't so much that, I forgot about this, it wasn't so much that I called it A-0030, it's that I hadn't selected the default ship-to code on this tab. So once you create the ship-to address, make sure you select it as the default ship-to code. So it doesn't matter if it's called default or not, my mistake. You just have to make sure that you've actually selected one of the ship-to addresses that you created and put that on the shipping tab. And then once it exists on the shipping tab, then you should be able to check the Permit Web Orders box on the card. Again, this is only if you're using Agency Express, so if not, you don't need to select Permit Web Orders. However, you may wish to have an agency group code defined or assigned so that all the qualifiers associated with that agency group code are automatically assigned to this agency. Service areas, this is just a text field, so you can fill in information here. It's for informational purposes only. Same with product sources. Maybe you want to keep track of what types of product this particular agency can get. Maybe they can only get donated and you just want to have that be here on the agency card. This won't actually have any effect on what product can be put on their orders. That's handled through the qualifiers, but you can at least have the information showing here on the Information tab. Same with funding sources. If you need to keep track of how they get their funding, you can put that information here on this tab. If the agency maintains records of how they distribute their food to their individual programs, then you can check this box for client records maintained. If not, you can just leave it unchecked. If this agency is another food bank, then you would want to select the UNC Food Bank ID number from the drop-down list. And if you click on Advanced, you'll notice that it takes you to a list of UNC Food Bank IDs. If a UNC Food Bank ID is a cluster food bank, there should be a checkbox in the cluster column. And the determination, first that the agency is another food bank, determines where distributions to that agency will show on the quarterly poundage report or the receipts and distributions report. If you are distributing to another food bank, then those distribution pounds will show in the section for other food banks or I think other members on that report on page 2. Also, if they're a food bank, then distributions will not be included on the distribution pounds by county report because it's another food bank, so the distributions that they actually do will be included on their distribution pounds by county report. So Eating America doesn't want those reported twice, so they will not be included on your report, but would be included on that agency's report. So it's important to make sure that you only choose a UNC Food Bank ID for agencies that are other food banks. And if they are a cluster food bank, then they should have a checkbox in the cluster column, and then on the agency or the distributions page of the receipts and distribution report, it will show up in the distributed to cluster members. SDO used to be Satellite Distribution Organization. Now they're called RDOs or PDOs. If your agency is one of those, then you would check this box here. And any distributions to RDO, PDOs do not automatically get included on the receipts and distributions report. However, you can, when running the report, decide to manually enter those distribution pounds, and then they will print on the report in the area for distributions to our PDOs, RDOs, or I think on the report it still says SDO as well. So if you check this box, distributions to the agency will not automatically show on the QPR/receipts and distributions report unless you manually fill them in. Food bank program. This field is usually selected if this is like a brown bag program, some agency that you serve directly by the food bank, like an internal agency, then you would select this food bank program. State in the URL, this is a field that's for Agency Express and is only needed if you're using Agency Express, and statements are going to be sent to the web, and there's a lot of information that has to be put in place before you can actually set that up. So we would need to fill this in unless you're doing that and have everything set up to use a statement URL. 501c3, like the parent agency, if you have 501c3 on the parent agency card, it should flow here, but you can update it if the agency has a different value. You can just update it in the field once you're on the agency card. You can also fill in geographical location if any exist, metropolitan area code if any exist, federal congressional district, state congressional district, and FBC size code. So depending on how you've set up the FBC size code, and you can set them up here if you don't already have one. If you need one, say that's extra small, can't have less than 1 member, or extra large, probably can't have more than 100 plus, but you could have large be 100 to 499, and then extra large is 500 and more. You can set up the FBC sizes. There may be a standard way of doing that I'm not familiar with, but this is what we have in our example database here. So we'll select our FBC size code. We'll collapse the information tab, and then you'll see the state specific tab. And this was set up with some food banks in New York in mind, so you may or may not need to fill in any information on this tab. I'm not sure what all the requirements are for the state-specific HIPNAP, but hopefully if you are required to enter the HIPNAP information, then you would be familiar with that and know what information to add here. I'm going to go back to the shipping tab because I missed the delivery zone code here. If you have if the agency was a shipment method of actually I missed a couple fields here. If their default shipment method is deliver or delivery, then you can select that here. If it's pickup or whatever their default shipment method code is. Again, this can always be overwritten on the agency order, but this will flow to the agency order, and then you can decide then if they're, for some reason they normally get deliveries, but they're coming in to pick up an order, you can change it on the order itself. So I've selected a shipment method code of deliver, and now I want to select the appropriate delivery zone code because there may be charges associated with those deliveries, and the delivery zone will determine what those charges are. So I see all the delivery zones here, but I can click on advanced and get some more information. Let's go ahead and expand this here, see what some of our columns are. Well, it looks like we don't really get a whole lot of information. We have the code and the description. So this particular agency is in Cook County, so I'm going to select the Cook County deliveries zone. And that populates the field here, and that will flow to the agency orders. If there are some delivery information notes that you need to have also on the orders, you can enter them here. And they will flow to the delivery web tab on an agency order. But note that if this is an agency that's permitted for web ordering, and they put information in the comment section on the online order, it will overwrite the delivery info from the agency card unless you have a customization in place, and I'm not even sure how they would do that, to have it parsed so that you would keep the delivery info from the agency and get the comments from the agency order online. But typically, whatever is entered in the comment section on Agency Express will overwrite the delivery info that goes from the agency to the agency order. But we'll just put in delivery info. And this information will go to the agency order when it's created. If using UPS locations, if you have the integration, then this information will need to be selected here. Combined shipments. I don't believe this can be used if you're using Agency Express because the shipment, I could be incorrect on that one, but the shipments, I believe, have to stay. Actually, you know what? I don't think that matters anymore in Ceres 2009. I know it did before. But combined shipments mean that if you have 3 agency orders and they're all for the same date, or I don't even know if it matters if it's for the same date, but it's the same agency order and you want to combine them onto one, then you can check this box. And that will allow you to be able to do that. Shipping agent code. If you keep track of how you ship to the agency, you can select from the available ones, or you can add a new one. You can also set up shipping agent service codes. We don't have any set up here, but you can set up, if you would desire, a shipping agent service code and assign that on the agency card. If you have shipping time that's required to get it from you to the agency itself, you can put in the shipping number of days for shipping. If it's the same day, then you don't need to put anything in here. But if there is a difference, so let's say they have a shipment date of the end of the week, but it takes 1 day to get there, then you want to make sure that it actually goes out the day before, so the shipping time can be entered here, and that information will flow to the agency order. And that's pretty much it for the shipping tab. So those are all the fields on the agency card itself. Some of the information that you can get about an agency you can access from the related information tab at the top, and then go to agency. We don't have any agency ledger entries yet because we haven't done any distributions or any other types of transactions. But if you did have some and you wanted to view them, you can go to ledger entries, or you can use Control-Shift-N to also take you to the ledger entries. If using lease storage, you would be able to get information on these two fields here. If you're using reminders and finance charge memos, you can access them from the issued documents link. To set up a new shopper for the agency, if using shoppers, then you would go to the agency related information option and then choose shoppers. And we'll go ahead and create a new shopper. If I hit enter here and using default numbering, then it will automatically populate once I fill in the information. Oops, I got cap locks on there. As you can see, as soon as I typed in the name and hit enter, it created the shopper number from the number series associated with shoppers. And then I would put in my email address. The parent agency and agency number, obviously they flow from those respective cards. The field here is blocked. If you needed to block a shopper, I would recommend that before you ever block a shopper, that you would actually unpermit them for web ordering, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself first, so we're going to skip past those two fields. If I don't like where they are in the layout, I can move them down. Now, there we go. So now permit web orders and web login are before blocked and blocked reason. Actually, I should change it so that web logins before permit web orders, because if they are a web ordering agency and shopper, you actually have to create their web login before you can permit them for web ordering. So the web login should go ahead of permit web orders. So I will put in my web login. So this would be whatever they would use to log in to Agency Express, along with a password that they will create. The default always starts out as a specific password, which we would send out if you were doing Agency Express. And then once they log in, they can change their password directly on the Agency Express website. In order to mark a shopper as permitted for web ordering, they have to have a first and last name, they have to have a web login, and then you can check permit web orders. Now, if you do need to block a shopper for some reason, the best thing to do so that the information about the shopper not being able to order any longer gets sent to the web, the first thing that you would want to do is unpermit them for web orders, which then sends a file to Agency Express to say that the shopper is no longer able to log in and place orders. Then you can block them. If you block them first, then the information about them being permitted for web orders will never get sent, or not being permitted for web orders, will never get sent to the web, and they would still be able to log in, and you would wonder why they're blocked, why they can't, or why they can still submit orders. So make sure that you uncheck permit web orders first, and the information gets transmitted to the web, and then you can block them. And when you block them, you can enter a blocked reason. So that's how you can create a new shopper and how to define them as primitive for web ordering or how to block a shopper, etc. Also under related information, agency button, you'll see comments. This allows you to put comments on the agency card. And when you select here, it autofills in the current date. You can change that if necessary. You can put in the comment, and this will be stored with the agency card. As you can see, the code field doesn't have any links to anything. I don't know of a reason to enter a code here, although you may have code set up for different types of messages or comments that you use somewhere else throughout the system, in which case you can assign the code here. When I click OK, if I go to related information and go back to comments again, you'll notice there's kind of a little, actually I think that was maybe there before, but I can go and view the comment from here. I can also, I believe, get to comments. Oh, no, it doesn't have a quick way of getting there, it doesn't look like. But I can access the comments here, and I can also create new comments here. For setting up dimensions associated with an agency, you would go to related information and then dimensions. And here you can assign default dimensions associated with the agency. So if you need to keep track of the department, the default dimension value code for this agency, whatever it should be, you would go ahead and assign that. And the value posting rule, this determines whether or not the department code is mandatory by selecting code mandatory. So that means that any transactions associated with this agency would require that a department code value be entered, but it doesn't have to match the dimension value code listed here, which is department 30. It just means that you cannot post any transaction for this agency without having a department defined. If same code is selected, then you must have 30 in order to post the transaction as your department code on that particular entry, or it will not allow you to post. If no code is selected, then you probably don't want to have a dimension value code defined here because that's going to flow to any transaction associated with this agency. And no code means that in order to post, no dimension for department can be assigned. Blank means you don't have any value posting rules, so that just means that the dimension value for department 30 will flow to the orders, but you can post regardless of whether you have a department code on the transaction or whether it's department code 30 or any other department. And then assign as many default dimensions as necessary for what you need. And we'll make this one a code mandatory. And then click OK, and now you've defined your dimensions. Also under related information agency, we'll skip past bank accounts because usually agencies don't have their own bank accounts defined. It's defined by the bank account that you process all of your transactions through, and that's defined by your bank account setup. We already discussed ship-to addresses. Contact, if you're using relationship management, then you'll notice that contact was created when I created the contact on the card, and the I believe this was the other contact that was created as well. So I have two now, and they will show up here in the list. You can also add new ones here if desired. If you're creating a new agency and you want to copy the data from an existing agency, you can choose Copy Data from Agency. We've already created the agency, so we're not going to do this, but you can find the agency that you want to copy from and then click OK, and it will copy all the information from that agency. So if you want to set up, say, a template for your agencies, or maybe this agency is very similar to another one that's already in the system, And when you're creating a new agency, you can simply copy from that one and then make changes to all the fields that are different. I'm going to say cancel, otherwise it's going to replace all the stuff that I did. Statistics, this is a great way to view statistics, overall statistics for this particular agency. We don't have any yet because we haven't done any transactions, but I think actually what I'll do is we'll go look at an agency that maybe has some information on it, so we can look at some of the other stuff real quickly. But before I do that, I just wanted to, no, actually, I guess that's all I need to do here. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And let's go see if we can find one that maybe has some transactions on it. Do we have a balance of 0 on that one? See if they've got any transactions. Oops. Nope. Okay, so there's some transactions on this one. They have a 0 balance because they had a payment and an invoice, and the payment cleared out the invoice, but we do have some transactions. So as you can see, when I went to related, when I click on the balance field, because the balance is 0, this field here is actually filtering for only open invoices. So it's not going to show me anything because there are no open invoices for this agency. So the only way to see the transactions that are already closed is to go to related information and then ledger entries, or use Control-Shift-N. And then I can see those transactions. And if I want to navigate to the invoice, for example, I can highlight that line, click on Navigate, and then it will take me to the posted invoice. Well, almost. Now, in this case, I got a message that said the combination of document number and posting date has been used more than once. This will occur if for some reason the document number exists in the system more than once, and sometimes it will still open up the form, which is great because in this case I want to go look at this posted agency invoice, and whatever I want to look at I would highlight on and then choose show, and then it takes me to that particular form. In this case it takes me to the posted invoice. If I go back by clicking X on that one, now if I want to look at the GL entries associated with that invoice, I click on GL entry, click on show, and it shows me all the GL transactions associated with that particular invoice. And the GL accounts that are hit here were determined by the general posting setup. So the general business posting group, the agency posting group define what GL accounts are hit for the agency. And then the product on the order determines what GL accounts are hit for the inventory side of it. And on this one you can see there's also bank account. So here's the customer entry and here's the bank account entry. You can also look at statistics for the order. So that was up here on ledger entries. Now we're going to drop down here to statistics. So here I can look at an overall view of the agency. They have no balance, but if they did, it would show here any outstanding orders, any orders that have been shipped but not yet invoiced. Service orders are not being used, so there would be nothing here. Any outstanding invoices, total, their credit limit, any overdue amounts, what their total pounds distributed are. And if you click on that, it'll take you to any transactions where pounds were distributed and what that transaction was. And then under fees, if you have fees associated with those transactions, it will show you them based on the accounting period. So it's going to show you the different fees, and based on these fields here, profit, etc. And you can scroll down and see all the fields. You can also go to entry statistics, which are a little bit different. This is going to show you when the last payment was, when the last invoice was, and the reason we got that message about the document number existing twice is because for some reason the payment, whoever did the payment, used the same document number on the payment as the invoice had. Typically that's not going to be the case. You're going to have a check number as your payment document number, so you would not have that scenario, but that's why we got that message. If there are any remaining amounts, they're going to show over here. This shows you the original amount, and then it also breaks them down by accounting periods, number of payments, number of invoices, etc. You can also see the fees and pounds for this agency by clicking on fees and pounds. You can change the way that it's displayed here by going to the view by. So if you want to look at it in, let's say, quarter, then you can select quarter, and if you want to view it as balance at date rather than net change, then when you change balance at date, notice that there was a balance as of 1/1/2012, and it hasn't changed since then, so that's why it remains at 20 for all of these. And then if you want net change, then it shows that the only net change was there in January of 2012 and nothing since then. And if you want to do it by year, then it changes the way it looks. Period. Then it's going to be by accounting period. So however you have your accounting period set up, it will change that as well. Qualifiers, here's where you would see qualifiers associated with the agency. If they've been assigned a agency group, then the qualifiers associated with that agency will also show here. And any additional qualifiers that are not associated with an agency group can be added in the screen. Delivery restrictions and handling capabilities. If you wish to take note of whether they can, if they have any delivery restrictions, or if they can handle certain types of food such as refrigerated or frozen, then you can add those here. When we go to look at the handling capability screen, I'm not sure here what our other fields are, if any, just the agency number. You can choose the handling capability, so if they accept refrigerated, then you've added that as a handling capability. There's nothing else attached to that. It's not like a qualifier where you assign it to the storage requirement, although that can be done. But it's just more for informational purposes. And that would be under handling capabilities. If using standing appointments, then you can set them up here from the standing appointments menu. If they have any standing appointments, then they're going to show up here. If you're setting up a template for standing appointments, then you would click on Setup, set up the template. So if you're setting up standing appointments for, say, delivery, you would pick their location. You would put in what a description is for their standing appointment. So if they got deliveries on the first Thursday, then you would select 1 as the week and month, Thursday as the day of week. You don't need to put a date and month because it's every first Thursday. And then the appointment time you would only be able to fill in if you've already got a calendar created for the deliver appointments. For actually, I take that back. You can set this up. I think you have to have the default calendar set up, but you don't have to have the individual appointment line set up, but you would in order to actually create standing appointments. So let's say their deliveries are always at 8 a.m. on the first Thursday of the month. Then when running create standing appointments, as long as there's an appointment time available on the date of that month that you're creating for, it will fill in the slot and create the standing appointment. That will be discussed, obviously, if you're using standing appointments, so I won't go into that any further than just to give you kind of an overview of that. Also under related information are agency days and hours. Here you can enter the days that the agency is open. So if they're open on Tuesdays, you can put in the date that they open and the date that they, or the time that they open, the time that they close. If they're open in the morning and then they close for a while, then you can put in a morning closing hour and an afternoon open hour. If they just are open until a certain time in the afternoon, you don't have to fill in the middle too. And you can use military time if you want. So I put in 1500 and it automatically put in 3 p.m. Frequency, I honestly do not know what frequency stands for in this particular field or in this form. I wish I had the answer to that, but I don't. Comments, here you can put any comments about this particular agency day and hour. If they were 24/7, you could check that. If they have special meal types, you can enter that here. And then you can go down and you can put in the next day of the week that they're open. So if they're open on Thursdays, maybe on Thursdays they're open at 9 and they close at 11:30, and they open again at 1 and they close at 3. So you can enter that information, and then you can get that information. I believe there's a report for agency days and hours. I haven't checked that, but we'll take a look here shortly. There's 2 other items listed under the agency, which is the agency activity review. That's regarding questionnaires, and we just don't have the capacity to cover questionnaires in this particular class. Same with agency reporting requirements. So I would, check to see if these are things that you need to have populated, in which case you'll get that information during implementation and should be able to go ahead and enter that information. And then you can also view any information in those areas by going to these 2 menu options. Under distributions, you can see invoice discounts. So if you're setting those up, you would find invoice discounts here. Any fees, this is having to do with the price groups that I talked about earlier, the fee groups. So if you assign a fee group to the agency, then you would select, if the fee group was assigned on the general, or not general tab, on the invoicing tab, then you would go in here and fill in the appropriate information. And if it's applied to items, then you would select the item here and fill in the rest of the information. But we're not going to do that, so I'm just going to delete it here. But just know that that's how you can access the agency fee information, related information, distributions, and then fees. Prepayment percentages, we talked about that a little bit if you're using those. Standard agency sales codes, I don't know anybody using those, so I don't really have any more information to add on that. If they have open orders, you can access them from here. If they have open return orders from here, those are probably the only 2 things that you would use under this distributions drop-down menu. So again, that would only be if you wanted to go see what open orders this specific agency had. Otherwise, you can just go to order processing, go to orders, and get a list of all your orders and access it from there. Under reports, there will be some default reports based on the setup that's associated with your food bank, and you can access them from this reports drop-down. You can also customize what reports show here, and we'll talk about that in the Customized Role Centers class. And for now, just know that you can see some of the common agencies and receivables reports from this drop-down menu. I'm on the agency card, but you can also get to this list of reports, I believe, from the agency list view. So I'm going to go ahead and close the agency card form here and then go to reports. Actually, we have more here. So on the agency card, there were fewer reports that were available than what we see here on the agency list view. Now, some of the things that, if you're on an agency list view, you can still get to some of the related information that was available from the card directly without actually having to open the card. So it's kind of a nice feature that you don't have to go into the card to get to some of this information. However, fields that are stored on the card that don't show in your list view here, you would need to open up the card in order to see. And you can make modifications to what show in your list, but that's covered in the Getting Started class. So hopefully you've either watched the Getting Started class or attended a Getting Started class and know how to modify the columns on your list view. So that basically, I believe, covers the agency relations overview. We talked about fields such as UNC Food Bank ID, SDO, Food Bank Program, the FBC County Code, permit web orders, UNC activity status, the credit limit, and location, and how you can set up your agency days and hours. And I think we were going to also look to see if we could find the agency days and hours report I don't happen to see it here in the drop down, so let's see if it comes up when I do a, yep. So I typed in days here in the search field and it found the agency days and hours report. I can either go to the menu and then find the report or go to the report directly by clicking here. But I'm going to go to the menu first, and the agency days and hours report is under lists. And you can see here that it basically just finds all the agencies and shows their agency days and hours and any information that was included when you did the setup. So the one that we just set up now was this agency here. And if I wanted to filter for just that agency, or maybe I want to filter just for those agencies that are open on Tuesdays, I can come up here and choose day of week, and I can type in Tuesday. And then when I hit enter or go, it shows me only the agencies that are open on Tuesday. And if I wanted to filter further by adding an advanced filter here where the opening hour is at 10 a.m., then I can do that. And now it only shows that one. So maybe now I want to take away the day of the week, but I want to keep opening hour of 10 a.m. So I see two agencies that open at 10 a.m. and one's open on Sunday and one's open on Tuesday. So that's how you use the agency days and hours report. I think that concludes the agency review training, and hopefully you'll join us again for another one of our exciting topics. Have a great day. Thank you.